What if I told you that every single person you meet is broadcasting their thoughts, emotions, and intentions without saying a word? What if the ability to read people like an open book wasn't some mystical gift, but a learnable skill based on scientific principles that anyone can master? In the next few hours, you're going to discover the hidden psychology behind human behavior and learn to decode the subtle signals that reveal what people are really thinking and feeling. Most people go through life completely blind to the psychological goldmine happening right in front of them. They miss the micro-expressions that flash across faces for split seconds. They ignore the body language clusters that scream discomfort or deception. They overlook the vocal patterns that reveal confidence, fear, attraction, or aggression. Meanwhile, a select few seem to possess an almost supernatural ability to read people instantly, to know exactly what someone is thinking before they even speak. The difference isn't magic or intuition. It's knowledge. It's understanding the fundamental principles of human psychology and knowing exactly what to look for. Every day, you interact with people who are unconsciously revealing their deepest thoughts and feelings through hundreds of tiny behavioral signals. Their posture tells you about their confidence level. Their eye movements reveal whether they're accessing memories or constructing lies. Their breathing patterns show their emotional state. Their micro-expressions leak their true feelings, no matter how hard they try to hide them. This isn't about manipulation or taking advantage of people. This is about developing a deeper understanding of human nature that will transform every aspect of your life. When you can read people accurately, you communicate better. You build stronger relationships. You avoid toxic individuals. You excel in negotiations. You become more persuasive. And you develop an intuitive sense about people that others find remarkable. Chapter 1. The Foundation of Human Psychology. Before we dive into the specific techniques of reading people, you need to understand the fundamental principles that govern all human behavior. Every signal, every gesture, every expression is rooted in basic psychological processes that have been hardwired into our brains over millions of years of evolution. The first principle you must understand is that humans are fundamentally social creatures. Our brains evolved in small tribal groups where reading social signals meant the difference between life and death. Being able to detect aggression, submission, attraction, deception, and alliance was crucial for survival. This is why we're all equipped with sophisticated neural circuitry designed to process social information, even though most people never learn to consciously access this system. Your brain is constantly processing thousands of pieces of social information every second. It's analyzing facial expressions, body positioning, vocal tonality, breathing patterns, skin color changes, pupil dilation, and dozens of other subtle cues. Most of this processing happens below the level of conscious awareness, which is why you sometimes get gut feelings about people that you can't quite explain. Learning to read people consciously is really about bringing this unconscious processing into your awareness. The second fundamental principle is that emotional states create predictable physiological changes. When someone experiences fear, anger, joy, sadness, or any other emotion, their nervous system triggers specific physical responses. Their heart rate changes, their breathing shifts, their muscle tension increases or decreases, their skin temperature fluctuates, and their facial muscles contract in precise patterns. These changes are largely involuntary, which means they're extremely difficult to fake convincingly. This is the foundation of all behavioral reading. Emotions leak through the body, whether people want them to or not. Someone might say they're fine, while their clenched jaw, shallow breathing, and rigid posture scream that they're actually stressed or angry. Someone might claim to be confident while their fidgeting hands, darting eyes, and high-pitched voice reveal their nervousness. The third principle is that humans have a baseline behavior pattern, and deviations from this baseline are significant. Everyone has their normal way of standing, speaking, gesturing, and expressing themselves. When something changes their emotional state, their behavior shifts away from this baseline in predictable ways. Learning to quickly establish someone's baseline and then spot deviations is one of the most powerful skills in reading people. For example, if someone normally speaks quickly and uses lots of hand gestures, but suddenly becomes slow and still when discussing a particular topic, that deviation is meaningful. If someone typically maintains good eye contact but starts looking away when you ask certain questions, that shift tells you something important is happening internally. The fourth principle is that context matters enormously. The same behavioral signal can mean completely different things in different situations. Crossed arms might indicate defensiveness in a confrontational meeting, but could simply mean someone is cold in an air-conditioned room. Rapid speech might signal excitement about a new project or anxiety about an upcoming deadline. Always consider the environment, the relationship dynamics, and the specific circumstances when interpreting signals. The fifth principle is that behavioral signals rarely occur in isolation. Instead of looking for single gestures or expressions, you need to look for clusters of behaviors that all point in the same direction. One sign of nervousness doesn't mean much, but when you see fidgeting hands, plus rapid blinking, plus shallow breathing, plus speech hesitations, all happening together, you can be much more confident in your assessment. Understanding these foundational principles changes how you observe people. Instead of just noticing that someone seems upset, you'll start to see the specific constellation of signals that led to that conclusion. Instead of having vague feelings about whether someone is being honest, you'll identify the particular behavioral patterns that trigger your suspicions. Chapter 2. Micro-expressions and the language of the face. The human face is the most expressive part of the body, capable of displaying over 10,000 different expressions. But among all these expressions, there are 7 universal emotional expressions that appear across all cultures and are virtually impossible to fake convincingly. These are anger, disgust, fear, happiness, sadness, surprise, and contempt. Learning to spot these micro-expressions is like gaining access to people's emotional broadcasting system. Micro-expressions are brief, involuntary facial expressions that leak true emotions, usually lasting between 1/25th and 1/5 of a second. They often occur when someone is trying to conceal their feelings or when they're not fully aware of their own emotional state. The beauty of microexpressions is that they're controlled by different neural pathways than conscious facial expressions, making them nearly impossible to suppress or fake. Let's start with anger, which creates a very distinctive facial pattern. The eyebrows pull down and together, creating vertical lines between them. The upper eyelids tense and may appear lowered. The lips press together firmly, often becoming thinner, and in more intense anger, the lips may part with teeth showing. The nostrils may flare slightly. Even when someone is trying to appear calm, These anger micro-expressions will flash across their face, revealing their true emotional state. Fear produces equally recognizable patterns. The eyebrows raise and pull together, creating horizontal lines across the forehead. The upper eyelids lift, exposing more of the white of the eyes, while the lower eyelids tense. The mouth often opens with lips that are either stretched horizontally or slightly parted. When you see these fear signals, you know someone is feeling threatened, anxious, or overwhelmed. Even if they're trying to project confidence, disgust is one of the most easily recognizable micro-expressions. The upper lip raises, often on only one side, creating an asymmetrical expression. The nose bridge may wrinkle, and the cheeks raise. The lower eyelid may push up slightly. Disgust isn't just about bad smells or tastes. People show disgust micro-expressions when they strongly disapprove of an idea, person, or situation. It's a powerful indicator of rejection or moral revulsion. Happiness is the emotion most people try to fake most often. But genuine happiness has specific characteristics that are hard to replicate. True happiness involves not just the mouth, but the entire face. The lips stretch horizontally and may part to show teeth. But the key indicator is in the eyes. Genuine happiness causes the orbicularis oculi muscles around the eyes to contract, creating crow's feet, wrinkles, and causing the cheeks to push up. This is called a Duchenne smile, named after the researcher who first identified it. Fake smiles only involve the mouth muscles, leaving the eyes unchanged. When someone gives you a fake smile, their eyes remain cold and unengaged. This is why you can often sense when someone is being artificially friendly or polite. Their mouth is smiling, but their eyes aren't participating in the expression. Sadness creates a very different pattern. The inner corners of the eyebrows pull up and together, often creating an inverted V shape. The lower eyelid may push up slightly, and the corners of the mouth pull down. In deeper sadness, the upper eyelids may appear droopy or heavy. Even when someone is trying to hide their sadness and put on a brave face, these micro-expressions will leak through, revealing their true emotional state. Surprise is usually brief and involves the entire face changing rapidly. The eyebrows raise high and curve, creating horizontal forehead lines. The upper eyelids lift, exposing more white, while the lower eyelids relax. The mouth often drops open, with no tension in the lips. True surprise is almost impossible to fake convincingly because it happens so quickly and involves such precise muscle coordination. Contempt is perhaps the most dangerous micro-expression to miss because it signals superiority, disrespect, and potential aggression. It's the only asymmetrical universal expression, typically showing as one corner of the mouth tightening and slightly raising. Sometimes it appears as a slight sneer or smirk. When you see contempt, you know someone feels superior to you or disapproves of you on a fundamental level. It's a warning sign in relationships and negotiations. Beyond these 7 universal expressions, you need to understand facial baseline behaviors. Everyone has their default facial expression, their normal amount of eye contact, their typical rate of blinking, and their standard facial tension levels. Deviations from these baselines are just as important as the universal expressions. For instance, if someone normally blinks 15 times per minute, but suddenly starts blinking 30 times per minute, that change is significant, regardless of which emotion it might indicate. If someone typically maintains steady eye contact but begins looking away frequently when discussing certain topics, that shift tells you something important is happening internally. Eye behavior deserves special attention because eyes truly are windows to inner states. When people are lying or uncomfortable, they often increase their blink rate significantly. When they're trying to remember something genuine, their eyes typically look up and to their left. When they're constructing or imagining something, their eyes often look up and to their right. When they're accessing feelings, they tend to look down and to their right. Pupil dilation is another powerful indicator. Pupils dilate not just in low light, but also when people are interested, attracted, excited, or experiencing strong emotions. If someone's pupils are dilated while looking at you or listening to your ideas, it's often a sign of genuine interest or positive emotional response. The key to mastering facial reading is practice and observation. Start paying attention to people's faces during conversations. Notice the brief expressions that flash across before they settle into their controlled, social expression. Watch how their baseline changes throughout interactions. Begin to correlate facial expressions with what people say and do, and you'll start to develop an intuitive sense for when faces and words don't match. Chapter 3. Body Language Clusters and Spatial Dynamics. While faces reveal emotions, bodies reveal attitudes, intentions, and psychological states. Body language operates largely below conscious awareness, making it one of the most reliable ways to understand what people are really thinking and feeling. But here's the crucial point. You must read body language in clusters, not individual gestures. A single gesture might mean anything, but multiple signals pointing in the same direction create a clear picture. Let's start with confidence versus insecurity clusters. Confident people tend to take up space. They stand tall, with shoulders back and relaxed. Their gestures extend away from their body. They use purposeful movements rather than fidgeting. Their stance is stable and balanced. They make appropriate eye contact without staring or looking away too quickly. Their handshake is firm but not crushing, and they hold it for the right duration. Insecure people do the opposite. They make themselves smaller by hunching shoulders, crossing arms, or keeping hands in pockets. Their gestures stay close to their body. They shift their weight frequently or rock back and forth. They might fidget with objects, touch their face or neck frequently, or play with their hair. Their eye contact is either too little, with frequent looking away, or too much, with inappropriate staring. Now let's examine openness versus defensiveness. Open body language includes an upright but relaxed posture, arms loose at the sides or gesturing naturally, palms visible when speaking, leaning slightly forward during conversation, and feet pointing toward the person they're engaging with. Open people remove physical barriers between themselves and others, and their facial expression matches their body positioning. Defensive body language creates barriers, arms crossed over chest or stomach, hands clasped behind back or in pockets, turning the body away while keeping the head facing forward, stepping backward during conversation, placing objects like bags or drinks between themselves and others. Defensive people often touch their throat, cover their mouth while speaking, or rub their neck when uncomfortable. Aggression has its own distinct cluster of signals. Aggressive posturing includes puffing out the chest, placing hands on hips in a challenging stance, pointing fingers or jabbing motions, clenched fists, tight jaw muscles, forward-leaning posture that invades personal space, and intense, unwavering eye contact that feels like staring. The voice often becomes louder and more clipped. Submission and appeasement show the reverse pattern. Submissive body language includes making the body smaller, shoulders rounded forward, head tilted down or to the side, hands visible with palms up, stepping back when others approach, avoiding direct eye contact, and nervous gestures like hand-wringing or fidgeting. Attraction creates fascinating body language patterns that most people miss entirely. When someone is attracted to another person, they unconsciously orient their entire body toward that person. Their feet point in that direction even when they're talking to someone else. They lean in slightly and reduce the distance when possible. Their posture improves, standing taller and pulling shoulders back. They mirror the other person's movements and positions. Attraction also triggers grooming behaviors. Women might smooth their hair, adjust their clothing, or touch their neck or collarbone. Men might straighten their tie, adjust their posture, or run their hands through their hair. Both sexes tend to increase eye contact and smile more frequently, though these smiles are often different from their social smiles, appearing more genuine and reaching their eyes. Deception creates complex body language patterns because lying requires mental effort and often triggers stress responses. Liars frequently increase their self-soothing behaviors, touching their face, neck, or mouth, rubbing their hands together, fidgeting with objects, or shifting their position frequently. They might create more distance by leaning back or turning their body away while their head remains facing you. Interestingly, many people become more rigid when lying, as if they're trying to control their body language. They might reduce their natural gesturing, keep their hands unusually still, or maintain an artificially steady posture. Their movements may seem choreographed rather than natural. Spatial dynamics reveal tremendous amounts of information about relationships and intentions. Every person has personal space preferences that vary based on culture, relationship, and situation. When someone consistently maintains greater distance than normal, it often indicates discomfort, dislike, or formality. When someone moves closer than typical, it might signal attraction, aggression, or a desire for more intimate communication. Watch how people position themselves in groups. High-status individuals tend to claim more space and position themselves in spots where they can see and be seen by others. They choose seats at the head of tables or in positions that allow them to control the flow of conversation. Lower-status individuals often position themselves in less prominent spots and take up less space. Territory marking is another crucial aspect of spatial behavior. People claim territory by placing personal objects in a space, draping clothing over chairs, or positioning themselves to control access to resources. In business settings, watch who sits where, who moves freely around the space, and who seems to own different areas of the room. Mirror neurons cause us to unconsciously copy the posture and movements of people we like or respect. This mirroring happens naturally in positive interactions. When you see two people who are genuinely connecting, their body language will often sync up. They'll adopt similar postures, match each other's energy levels, and unconsciously coordinate their movements. But forced or artificial mirroring feels different and can actually create discomfort. When someone is trying too hard to build rapport by copying your posture, the timing feels off and the mirroring seems deliberate rather than natural. The key to reading body language accurately is understanding that context matters enormously. Cold weather will make people cross their arms and hunch their shoulders, regardless of their emotional state. Formal situations create more rigid postures even from confident people. Cultural backgrounds influence personal space preferences and gesture meanings. Always establish baseline behavior first. Notice how someone typically stands, sits, and moves when they're comfortable. Then watch for changes from this baseline. If someone who normally gestures frequently suddenly becomes still, that change is significant. If someone who typically maintains distance suddenly moves closer, that shift tells you something about their internal state. Chapter 4. Vocal Patterns and the Hidden Messages in Speech. The human voice carries far more information than just the words being spoken. Vocal patterns reveal emotional states, confidence levels, truthfulness, and intentions with remarkable accuracy. While people can carefully choose their words, controlling vocal patterns requires much more conscious effort and skill, making the voice an incredibly reliable source of psychological information. Let's start with the fundamental vocal indicators of emotional states. When people experience stress, fear, or anxiety, their vocal patterns change predictably. The voice tends to become higher in pitch as tension affects the vocal cords. Speech rate often increases as stress hormones flood the system. Breathing becomes shallower, affecting voice projection and causing more frequent pauses for breath. The voice may develop a slight tremor or shake, and articulation often becomes less precise. Anger creates a distinctly different vocal signature. The voice typically deepens and becomes louder as the person attempts to project dominance. Speech rate may increase dramatically, with words running together. Consonants become sharper and more pronounced, especially plosive sounds like P, B, T, and K. There's often a clipped quality to the speech, with sentences ending abruptly rather than trailing off naturally. Sadness and depression produce the opposite vocal effects. The voice becomes lower and softer, with less energy behind the words. Speech rate slows significantly, with longer pauses between thoughts. There's often a flat, monotonous quality to the voice, lacking the normal variation in pitch and tone. Sentences may trail off without proper endings, and there's frequently a breathy quality to the voice. Excitement and genuine happiness create bright, energetic vocal patterns. The voice becomes more animated, with greater pitch variation. Speech rate increases, but unlike anxiety-driven speed, excited speech maintains clear articulation. There's often an upward inflection at the end of statements, not because the person is uncertain, but because they're sharing positive energy. Now let's examine the vocal patterns of confidence versus insecurity. Confident speakers use a lower pitch range and speak more slowly. They articulate clearly and use appropriate volume for the situation. Their sentences are complete and well-structured. They use purposeful pauses for emphasis, rather than filling silence with uh, or other hesitation sounds. Their voice has a steady quality without wavering or trembling. Insecure speakers show the opposite patterns. Their voice often becomes higher and may crack under pressure. They speak too quickly, as if rushing to get their words out before being interrupted. They use excessive filler words and hedging language like maybe, I think, sort of, and kind of. Their sentences often turn into questions even when making statements. with upward inflection that seeks approval or validation. Deception creates complex vocal patterns because lying requires cognitive effort and often triggers stress responses. Many people speak more slowly when lying because they need to think more carefully about their words. Others speak more quickly, trying to get through the deception quickly. The key is noticing changes from someone's baseline speaking pattern. Liars often use fewer contractions, saying, "I did not," instead of "I didn't," because the formal structure feels safer and more emphatic. They may use more distance language, saying, "that woman," instead of using someone's name, or "the car" instead of "my car." Their voice may lack the natural emotional variation that would be appropriate for what they're describing. Vocal hesitations become more frequent and appear in unusual places. Instead of pausing naturally at the end of thoughts, deceptive speakers often pause in the middle of sentences or before key information. They may clear their throat more frequently, especially before delivering crucial parts of their story. Breathing patterns change significantly with deception and emotional stress. Honest, relaxed speech flows with natural breathing rhythms. Deceptive or stressed speech often involves shallow breathing that creates irregular patterns. You might hear sharp intakes of breath before difficult topics, or notice that someone's voice becomes breathier as they struggle to get enough air to support their speech. Volume control reveals important psychological information. People who speak too softly may lack confidence or be unsure of their message. Those who speak too loudly might be overcompensating for insecurity or trying to dominate the conversation. Natural volume variation shows comfort and engagement, while monotone delivery suggests emotional withdrawal or deliberate control. Accent and pronunciation changes can indicate shifting emotional states. People often revert to stronger regional accents when stressed, angry, or emotional. They might also adopt more formal pronunciation when trying to impress or create distance. Some people unconsciously mirror the accent or speech patterns of people they want to connect with, while others deliberately change their speech to fit in or stand out. Speech rate variations tell compelling stories about internal states. Rapid speech might indicate excitement, anxiety, or a desire to dominate conversation time. Unusually slow speech could signal sadness, careful consideration, or deliberate attempts to appear thoughtful. But remember, everyone has a baseline speaking rate, and deviations from this baseline are more significant than absolute speed. Laughter and vocal expressions deserve special attention. Genuine laughter has a specific sound quality that's hard to fake. It tends to be more explosive at the beginning and trail off naturally. Fake laughter often sounds more controlled and may continue too long or end too abruptly. Nervous laughter typically has a higher pitch and may interrupt normal speech patterns inappropriately. Vocal mirroring happens unconsciously when people feel connected or want to build rapport. They begin to match each other's speaking pace, volume, and even accent subtleties. This synchronization indicates positive engagement and mutual respect. When vocal mirroring breaks down during a conversation, it often signals that connection is being lost. The timing of responses reveals crucial information about internal processing. Quick responses to complex questions might indicate rehearsed answers or superficial thinking. Appropriate pauses suggest thoughtful consideration. Delayed responses could indicate surprise, confusion, or careful construction of deceptive answers. Cultural factors significantly influence vocal interpretation. Some cultures value louder, more animated speech as signs of engagement and passion. Others prize quiet, measured delivery as indicators of wisdom and control. Always consider cultural context when interpreting vocal patterns, and focus more on changes from individual baseline behavior than absolute vocal characteristics. Chapter 5. Baseline, Behavior and Deviation Detection. Understanding baseline behavior is perhaps the most critical skill in reading people accurately. Everyone has their normal patterns of behavior, speech, and expression when they're comfortable and relaxed. These baseline patterns are like their psychological fingerprint, unique to each individual. The real insights come from detecting when someone deviates from their established baseline, because these deviations almost always signal important internal changes. Establishing someone's baseline requires careful observation during neutral or comfortable interactions. You need to notice how they typically stand, sit, and move when they're at ease. Pay attention to their normal speech patterns, how fast they talk, their usual volume, their typical gestures, their natural facial expressions, and their standard eye contact patterns. Notice their breathing rhythm, their posture preferences, and how they typically position their hands and feet. This baseline establishment usually takes at least 10 to 15 minutes of interaction, though you can begin forming impressions much sooner. The key is observing them during low-stakes conversation about neutral topics. Ask about their background, their interests, or current events they're not emotionally invested in. Watch how they behave when they're simply being themselves without pressure or stress. For example, if someone normally speaks at a moderate pace with frequent hand gestures, maintains steady eye contact, and sits in a relaxed position with uncrossed legs, that's their baseline. If later in the conversation they suddenly start speaking rapidly, keep their hands still, begin looking away frequently, and cross their arms tightly, those deviations are highly significant. Physical baseline patterns include posture preferences, natural gesture frequency and style, typical facial expressions during neutral conversation, normal breathing patterns, usual position of hands and feet, standard personal space preferences, and natural movement patterns. Some people are naturally more animated, while others are typically more reserved. Some maintain more formal posture, while others are naturally relaxed. Neither is better or worse, but understanding each person's normal helps you spot meaningful changes. Verbal baseline patterns encompass normal speaking pace and volume, typical use of gestures while talking, natural word choice and vocabulary level, usual sentence structure, complexity, normal use of filler words or pauses, standard emotional expression in voice, and typical response timing to questions. Again, everyone's normal is different, but changes from their individual normal are what matter. Emotional baseline involves understanding someone's typical emotional range and expression style. Some people are naturally more emotionally expressive, while others tend to be more controlled. Some show emotions primarily through facial expressions, while others express more through vocal changes or body language. Learn their normal emotional bandwidth so you can recognize when they're suppressing emotions or experiencing unusual intensity. Cognitive baseline patterns include typical processing speed for different types of questions, normal memory access behaviors, usual decision-making patterns, standard attention and focus patterns, and natural learning and comprehension styles. When someone who normally answers questions quickly suddenly becomes slow and thoughtful, or when someone who typically takes time to consider becomes unusually quick to respond, these changes signal important internal shifts. Social baseline encompasses normal interaction patterns with different types of people. Typical comfort levels in various social situations, usual leadership or following behaviors in groups, standard conflict resolution approaches, and natural rapport-building patterns. Someone who's normally socially confident but becomes withdrawn, or someone who typically follows but suddenly becomes assertive, is showing you something significant about their internal state. Environmental factors can temporarily shift someone's baseline behavior. Cold temperatures naturally make people cross their arms and hunch their shoulders. Loud environments cause people to speak louder and lean in closer. Formal settings create more rigid postures, even in typically relaxed individuals. High-stress situations elevate everyone's tension levels. Always consider whether environmental factors might be causing apparent deviations from baseline behavior. Time-based patterns also affect baseline behavior. Many people have different energy levels and behavioral patterns at different times of day. Some are naturally more animated in the morning, while others come alive in the evening. Some people are more open and talkative after meals, while others become more subdued. Understanding these natural rhythms helps you distinguish between normal fluctuations and significant deviations. The most significant baseline shifts occur around sensitive topics or high-stakes situations. When conversation moves from neutral subjects to personally meaningful or threatening topics, watch for clusters of behavioral changes. A single change might be coincidental, but multiple simultaneous deviations from baseline behavior indicate important internal processing. For instance, if someone's normal animated gesturing stops at the same time their voice becomes higher and they start touching their neck more frequently, you're seeing a significant emotional or cognitive shift. If someone who typically maintains good eye contact suddenly starts looking away while their speech becomes more formal and their posture stiffens, they're likely experiencing discomfort or stress about the current topic. Establishing baseline behavior with people you interact with regularly gives you tremendous advantages in understanding their psychological states over time. You'll begin to notice when they're having a bad day before they even mention it. You'll sense when they're excited about something, even when they're trying to play it cool. You'll detect when they're stressed or worried, even when they claim everything is fine. Professional interrogators, salespeople, therapists, and negotiators all use baseline establishment as a fundamental tool. They spend significant time early in interactions, building rapport, and observing normal behavior patterns specifically so they can detect meaningful deviations later. This isn't manipulation. It's simply understanding human psychology well enough to communicate more effectively. The key to accurate deviation detection is patience and systematic observation. Don't jump to conclusions based on single behavioral changes. Instead, look for patterns of multiple deviations occurring together. Consider alternative explanations for behavioral shifts, including environmental factors, physical discomfort, or natural emotional fluctuations. But when you see consistent clusters of deviations from someone's established baseline, pay attention because they're telling you something important about their internal experience. Chapter 6: Context and Environmental Psychology. Understanding human behavior requires mastering the art of contextual interpretation. The same behavioral signal can mean completely different things depending on the environment, situation, and social dynamics at play. A skilled behavior reader always considers the context before drawing conclusions about what they're observing. Physical environments profoundly influence behavior in predictable ways. Cold temperatures make people cross their arms, hunch their shoulders, and move more quickly. Behaviors that in warm environments might signal defensiveness or anxiety. Bright lighting tends to make people more alert and animated, while dim lighting often creates more subdued, intimate behaviors. Loud environments force people to lean closer, speak louder, and use more dramatic gestures just to communicate effectively. Crowded spaces trigger different behavioral patterns than private settings. In crowds, people naturally reduce their personal space tolerance, make less eye contact to avoid unwanted interactions, and often appear more guarded or defensive. These same behaviors in an uncrowded setting would suggest discomfort or dislike, but in crowds, they're simply adaptive responses to environmental pressure. Social hierarchies within environments dramatically affect behavior. In formal business settings, lower-status individuals typically take up less space, speak more quietly, and defer to higher-status people through body language and vocal patterns. The same person who appears confident and dominant at home might seem submissive and uncertain in their boss's office. Always consider the social dynamics and power structures of the environment you're observing. Cultural contexts within the same physical space can create vastly different behavioral norms. A behavior that signals respect in one cultural context might signal submission in another. Direct eye contact shows confidence and honesty in many Western cultures, but can be considered disrespectful or aggressive in others. Understanding the cultural background of both the environment and the individuals helps prevent misinterpretation of perfectly normal cultural behaviors. Time-based contexts matter enormously. The same person may behave completely differently at 8 a.m. versus 8 p.m. Some people are naturally more animated and social in the morning, while others don't fully engage until later in the day. Monday morning behaviors often differ dramatically from Friday afternoon behaviors, even in the same individuals. Consider natural circadian rhythms and weekly patterns when interpreting behavior. Stress levels in environments affect everyone's behavior. High-stress environments like emergency rooms, courtrooms, or crisis meetings will elevate everyone's tension and change normal behavioral patterns. People who are typically calm and measured might appear anxious or aggressive simply because they're responding to environmental stress. Don't mistake stress responses for personality traits or emotional states directed at you personally. Relationship dynamics within environments create complex behavioral patterns. The same person might be dominant with subordinates, equal with peers, and deferential with superiors, all within the same day. Family dynamics create entirely different behavioral patterns than professional relationships. Someone who appears confident and decisive at work might seem hesitant and accommodating at family gatherings. Privacy levels dramatically influence behavior. People behave differently when they know they're being observed versus when they believe they have privacy. Public settings often create more controlled, socially appropriate behaviors, while private settings allow more authentic expressions. Be aware of whether people know they're being observed and how that awareness might be influencing their behavior. Emotional contexts of situations shape behavioral interpretation. During celebrations, animated and loud behavior is normal and expected. During solemn occasions, the same behaviors would be inappropriate and concerning. During conflicts, defensive body language and tense vocal patterns are natural responses to the situation rather than indicators of deception or guilt. Technology contexts in modern environments create new behavioral patterns. People checking phones might appear disengaged or disrespectful, but could simply be responding to urgent communications. Video calls create different behavioral patterns than face-to-face interactions, with people often appearing more formal or controlled on camera. Virtual meetings change natural eye contact patterns and gesture frequency. Task-oriented contexts influence behavior predictably. People engaged in complex mental tasks often appear withdrawn or unresponsive, not because they're being antisocial, but because they're focusing cognitive resources. Creative tasks might make people appear scattered or unfocused when they're actually in productive brainstorming mode. Physical tasks change posture and movement patterns in ways that have nothing to do with emotional states. Chapter 7. Digital Age Behavior. Reading. The digital revolution has created entirely new channels for reading human behavior, while also changing how people express themselves in traditional face-to-face interactions. Understanding digital behavior patterns gives you insights into people's personalities, emotional states, and intentions through their online communications and digital habits. Text messaging patterns reveal substantial psychological information. Response timing tells you about someone's priorities, emotional investment, and communication style. People who consistently respond immediately might be eager to please, anxious about relationships, or simply have different boundaries around digital communication. Those who take hours or days to respond might be busy, playing games, or genuinely prefer asynchronous communication. Message length patterns are equally revealing. People who consistently send short, clipped messages might be efficiency-focused, emotionally distant, or uncomfortable with written communication. Those who send lengthy, detailed messages often enjoy connection, want to be clearly understood, or process thoughts through writing. Sudden changes in message length from someone's normal pattern indicate shifts in emotional state or relationship dynamics. Punctuation and grammar choices in informal digital communication reveal personality traits and emotional states. People who maintain perfect grammar and punctuation in text messages often value precision, professionalism, or control. Those who ignore conventional rules might be more casual, creative, or focused on speed over form. Sudden increases in punctuation errors from someone who's normally precise might indicate stress, distraction, or emotional upset. Emoji and emoticon usage patterns provide emotional intelligence insights. People who frequently use emojis often value emotional expression and want to ensure their tone is understood correctly. Those who rarely use emotional indicators might be more formal, less emotionally expressive, or prefer verbal communication. Changes in emoji usage can signal relationship changes or emotional shifts. Social media behavior creates rich psychological profiles. Posting frequency reveals extroversion levels, need for attention, and life satisfaction. People who post constantly might be seeking validation, sharing joy, or feeling isolated. Those who rarely post might be private, busy, or consume rather than create content. Sudden increases or decreases in posting frequency often correlate with major life changes or emotional shifts. Content themes in social media posts reveal values, interests, and psychological states. People who consistently share motivational content might be struggling with confidence or genuinely want to inspire others. Those who share mostly negative news or complaints might be pessimistic, seeking attention, or processing difficult emotions. People who primarily share others' content rather than creating original posts might be more reserved or prefer curation to creation. Digital timing patterns reveal lifestyle and personality characteristics. People who are active on social media late at night might be night owls, insomniacs, or in different time zones. Those who post only during business hours might be very structured, using social media professionally, or accessing it only from work devices. Weekend versus weekday posting patterns reveal work-life balance and digital habits. Email communication styles translate many traditional behavioral reading principles to digital formats. Subject line choices reveal urgency levels, respect for recipients' time, and communication clarity. People who use vague subject lines might be poor planners, expect others to read everything, or use different organizational systems. Those with detailed, clear subject lines often respect others' time and think systematically. Email response patterns mirror many in-person communication styles. People who respond to emails immediately might be anxious, highly responsive, or have different boundary expectations. Those who take longer often are busy, process information carefully, or prefer to respond thoughtfully rather than quickly. The quality of responses often correlates with how much they value the relationship or topic. Video call behavior combines traditional body language reading with new digital dynamics. People often behave more formally on video calls than in person, but you can still observe facial expressions, upper body language, and vocal patterns. Pay attention to camera positioning choices, background selection, and technical setup, as these often reveal personality traits and self-perception. Background choices in video calls reveal personality and values. Highly organized, professional backgrounds might indicate someone who values control and presentation. Casual, personal backgrounds often suggest comfort with intimacy and less formal communication preferences. Virtual backgrounds might indicate privacy concerns, poor lighting situations, or desire to control image presentation. Eye contact patterns change in video communication because looking at someone's eyes on screen means looking away from the camera. People who make good eye contact by looking directly into the camera often understand video communication dynamics well and want to create connection. Those who constantly look at the screen rather than the camera might be less experienced with video calls or more focused on seeing reactions than creating presence. Digital availability patterns reveal boundaries and communication preferences. People who are constantly online might be socially anxious, highly connected professionally, or simply enjoy digital communication. Those who maintain clear online-offline boundaries often value privacy, face-to-face relationships, or have strong time management skills. Gaming and app usage patterns provide personality insights. People who excel at strategy games often enjoy planning and complex thinking. Those who prefer social games might value connection and collaboration. People who spend significant time on productivity apps often are goal-oriented and value efficiency. Entertainment app preferences reveal personality traits, values, and stress management approaches. Chapter 8. Cultural Intelligence and Cross-Cultural Reading. Reading people accurately across cultural boundaries requires understanding how different cultures express emotions, interpret behaviors, and structure social interactions. What signals confidence in one culture might indicate arrogance in another, and what shows respect in one context might seem submissive elsewhere. Eye contact norms vary dramatically across cultures and can lead to serious misinterpretations. Many Western cultures view direct eye contact as a sign of honesty, confidence, and respect. However, numerous cultures consider prolonged direct eye contact disrespectful, especially toward authority figures or elders. Some cultures teach children that looking directly at adults is rude or challenging. Understanding these differences prevents misreading averted gaze as deception or discomfort when it's actually culturally appropriate behavior. Personal space preferences change significantly across cultural backgrounds. Northern European and North American cultures typically prefer larger personal bubbles, especially between casual acquaintances. Mediterranean, Latin American, and many Asian cultures often maintain closer distances during conversation. Someone standing closer than your cultural norm isn't necessarily being aggressive or intimate. They might simply be communicating within their cultural comfort zone. Touching norms create another area where cultural misunderstanding frequently occurs. Some cultures use touch frequently during communication, with hand-holding, back-patting, and arm-touching being normal parts of conversation. Other cultures strictly limit touching to specific relationships and contexts. Misreading these cultural differences can lead to assumptions about comfort levels, relationship status, or intentions that are completely inaccurate. Facial expressions, while having universal components, carry different cultural meanings and acceptance levels. Smiling frequency and intensity vary significantly across cultures. Some cultures smile frequently as social lubricant and politeness, while others reserve smiles for genuine happiness or close relationships. Americans often misinterpret less frequent smiling as unfriendliness, while people from cultures with more reserved smiling norms might see constant American smiling as superficial or fake. Vocal patterns and volume preferences differ substantially across cultural groups. Some cultures value loud, animated discussion as signs of engagement and passion. Others prize quiet, measured speech as indicators of wisdom and thoughtfulness. Mediterranean and Middle Eastern cultures often speak more loudly and interrupt more frequently than Scandinavian or East Asian cultures, where interrupting is considered extremely rude. Hierarchy and authority expressions create complex cross-cultural dynamics. Some cultures maintain strict hierarchical communication patterns with specific language, posture, and behavioral requirements when interacting across status levels. Others emphasize egalitarian communication regardless of status differences. Misreading these patterns can lead to offense or missed respect signals. Gender role expectations influence behavior interpretation across cultures. Some cultures have strict behavioral expectations based on gender, while others allow more flexibility. Behaviors that seem confident and appropriate in one culture might be seen as aggressive or inappropriate in another based on gender role expectations. Understanding these dynamics prevents misinterpreting culturally influenced behaviors as personality traits. Religious and spiritual influences shape behavioral patterns in ways that secular analysis might miss. Religious cultures often have specific behavioral requirements around modesty, social interaction, and expression of emotions. Dietary restrictions, prayer schedules, and religious holidays create behavioral patterns that might seem unusual without cultural context. Business culture norms affect professional behavior reading significantly. Punctuality expectations vary from cultures where being exactly on time is crucial to those where flexible timing is normal. Meeting participation styles range from cultures that value direct confrontation and debate to those where harmony and face-saving are paramount. Decision-making processes differ from individual-focused cultures to collective consensus cultures. Communication directness levels create frequent misunderstandings. High-context cultures communicate meaning through implication, relationship dynamics, and subtle cues, while low-context cultures prefer direct, explicit communication. Someone from a high-context culture might seem evasive or dishonest to someone from a low-context culture, while direct communicators might seem rude or aggressive to those expecting more subtle interaction styles. Emotional expression acceptance varies dramatically across cultures. Some cultures encourage open emotional expression and see emotional reserve as coldness or dishonesty. Others value emotional control and see excessive expression as weakness or inappropriateness. These differences can lead to completely wrong interpretations of someone's emotional state or personality. Age and generational cultural differences add complexity even within the same ethnic or national culture. Different generations often have varying communication styles, technology comfort levels, and social norm expectations. Someone raised in a more formal generation might seem stiff or unfriendly to someone from a more casual generation, while informal behavior might seem disrespectful to those expecting more traditional patterns. Socioeconomic cultural influences shape behavior in ways that cross ethnic and national boundaries. Different class backgrounds create different behavioral norms around directness, displays of emotion, physical space usage, and communication formality. Economic stress or privilege influences behavioral patterns in ways that might be misinterpreted as personality traits rather than circumstantial responses. Chapter 9. Advanced Pattern Recognition and Prediction. Once you've mastered basic behavior reading skills, advanced pattern recognition allows you to predict likely behaviors and responses before they occur. This level of skill comes from understanding how different personality types, emotional states, and psychological patterns typically unfold in various situations. Personality pattern recognition involves identifying consistent behavioral clusters that reveal underlying personality traits. Extroverted individuals typically display expansive body language, frequent verbal contributions, quick responses, animated facial expressions, and comfort with being the center of attention. Introverted people often show more contained body language, thoughtful pauses before speaking, preference for one-on-one conversations, and energy depletion in large groups. Detail-oriented personalities reveal themselves through precise word choices, organized physical spaces, systematic approaches to tasks, attention to small behavioral consistencies, and discomfort with ambiguity or incomplete information. Big-picture thinkers show opposite patterns with broad gestures, focus on overarching themes, tolerance for ambiguity, and impatience with excessive details. Competitive personalities display characteristic patterns, including comparing themselves to others frequently, body language that claims space and status, vocal patterns that project confidence and dominance, quick decision-making without extensive consultation, and discomfort when not winning or leading. Collaborative personalities show preferential patterns for group harmony, inclusive body language and speech patterns, consideration of others' opinions before deciding, and comfort with shared leadership or following. Emotional pattern prediction becomes possible when you understand how different emotional states typically progress. Anger rarely appears suddenly at full intensity. It usually builds through stages of irritation, frustration, and growing tension that create increasingly obvious behavioral signals. Learning to spot early anger indicators prevents being caught off guard by explosive outbursts. Stress patterns follow predictable progressions from mild tension through increasing anxiety to potential breakdown or aggressive responses. Early stress indicators include increased fidgeting, changes in breathing patterns, decreased eye contact, shortened responses, and increased self-soothing behaviors. Recognizing these early patterns allows intervention before stress escalates to problematic levels. Attraction and romantic interest create specific behavioral sequences that skilled observers can predict. Initial attraction often shows through increased grooming behaviors, mirroring of the other person's posture and movements, finding excuses for appropriate touch, increased eye contact and smiling, and orientation of the entire body toward the object of attraction. Understanding these patterns helps in both recognizing when someone is attracted to you and predicting their likely next behaviors. Deception patterns typically follow recognizable sequences because lying requires cognitive effort and often triggers stress responses. Most people show pre-lie behaviors like increased self-soothing, changes in breathing patterns, hesitation before key statements, and subtle shifts in body positioning. During lies, behavior often becomes more controlled and less natural. Post-lie behaviors frequently include relief signals and sometimes overcompensation to appear more honest. Conflict pattern recognition allows prediction of how disagreements will likely unfold based on early behavioral indicators. Some people show immediate aggressive responses with forward-leaning postures, increased volume, and direct confrontation. Others withdraw initially with defensive postures, reduced eye contact, and quieter responses, but may escalate later. Understanding these patterns helps choose appropriate response strategies. Decision-making patterns reveal how different people process choices and reach conclusions. Quick decision-makers often show confident body language, minimal hesitation, and comfort with ambiguity. Careful decision-makers display more closed or thoughtful postures, longer processing times, requests for additional information, and discomfort with time pressure. Trust-building patterns follow predictable sequences in most relationships. Initial wariness shows through protective body language, formal communication, and testing behaviors. Growing trust reveals itself through increased openness, more relaxed postures, sharing of personal information, and mirroring behaviors. Understanding these patterns helps navigate relationship development more effectively. Power dynamic patterns help predict how hierarchical relationships will unfold. Dominant personalities typically claim space immediately, initiate conversations and physical positioning, use expansive gestures, and expect others to accommodate their preferences. Submissive personalities often wait for cues from others, take up less space, mirror others' behaviors, and seek approval or validation. Stress response patterns vary among individuals but follow recognizable types. Fight response people become more aggressive, confrontational, and demanding under stress. Flight response individuals become withdrawn, avoidant, and eager to escape stressful situations. Freeze response people become very still, stop speaking normally, and seem unable to take action. Manipulation patterns often follow similar sequences regardless of the specific technique being used. Manipulators typically start with charm and rapport building, then test boundaries with small requests or boundary violations. They escalate gradually while watching for resistance, and often use guilt, obligation, or fear when direct approaches fail. Recognizing these patterns early prevents being drawn into manipulative dynamics. Recovery patterns from negative emotional states help predict how quickly and completely someone will bounce back from setbacks. Resilient people often show quick acknowledgement of problems, active problem-solving behaviors, seeking support when appropriate, and return to baseline behaviors relatively quickly. Less resilient individuals may show prolonged negative behaviors, avoidance patterns, and difficulty returning to normal functioning. Chapter 10. Ethical Boundaries and Practical Applications. Reading people effectively comes with significant ethical responsibilities. These skills give you access to information that people might prefer to keep private, and how you use this information defines whether you're building positive relationships or engaging in manipulation and exploitation. The fundamental ethical principle in behavior reading is using insights to improve communication and relationships rather than to gain unfair advantages over others. When you notice someone is stressed or uncomfortable, the ethical response is to adjust your communication to help them feel more at ease, not to press your advantage when they're vulnerable. When you detect deception, the appropriate response is usually to create safe space for honesty, rather than to trap or embarrass the other person. Consent and privacy considerations matter enormously in behavior reading. People deserve to know when they're being analyzed or studied, especially in professional contexts like therapy, interrogation, or negotiation. While casual observation is normal and expected in social interactions, intensive analysis without consent crosses ethical boundaries. Professional behavior readers, like therapists, law enforcement officers, and negotiators, have specific ethical guidelines about when and how to use their skills. Using behavior reading to help others communicate better represents the highest ethical application. When you notice someone struggling to express themselves, you can adjust your communication style to make them more comfortable. When you see that someone is feeling excluded or uncomfortable in a group, you can take steps to include them or address their concerns. When you recognize that someone is experiencing strong emotions, you can provide appropriate support or space. Manipulation versus understanding represents a crucial ethical distinction. Understanding someone's emotional state to communicate more effectively builds stronger relationships. Using that same understanding to exploit their vulnerabilities or pressure them into decisions they wouldn't normally make is manipulation. The difference lies in intent and outcome. Are you using this information to benefit both of you, or primarily to benefit yourself at their expense? Professional applications of behavior reading require specific ethical frameworks. Therapists use behavior reading to understand clients better and provide more effective treatment, but they're bound by confidentiality and must prioritize client welfare. Law enforcement officers use these skills to detect deception and assess threats, but they must respect legal rights and avoid coercion. Sales professionals can use behavior reading to understand customer needs better, but shouldn't exploit vulnerabilities or push inappropriate products. Relationship applications should focus on building stronger connections rather than gaining control. In romantic relationships, understanding your partner's emotional states and communication preferences helps you provide better support and avoid unnecessary conflicts. Using the same insights to manipulate your partner's decisions or exploit their insecurities damages trust and relationship health. Parenting applications require careful balance between understanding children's needs and respecting their developing autonomy. Reading children's behavioral signals helps parents provide appropriate support, recognize developmental challenges, and create safe environments. However, children also need privacy and the chance to develop their own emotional regulation skills without constant analysis. Teaching and mentoring contexts benefit enormously from behavior reading when used to support learning and growth. Understanding when students are confused, overwhelmed, or disengaged allows teachers to adjust their methods and provide appropriate support. Using these insights to pressure, embarrass, or control students violates the trust inherent in educational relationships. Business and professional contexts require transparent use of behavior reading skills. Understanding colleagues' communication styles and emotional states helps create better working relationships and more effective teams. Using these insights to gain unfair advantages in negotiations, manipulate colleagues, or exploit workplace vulnerabilities creates toxic environments and ethical violations. Cultural sensitivity remains crucial when applying behavior reading skills across different backgrounds. What seems like clear behavioral signals in one culture might be completely normal or have different meanings in another. Imposing your cultural interpretation on behaviors from other cultural contexts can lead to discrimination and misunderstanding rather than improved communication. Legal and moral boundaries vary significantly across contexts and jurisdictions. Some professional applications of behavior reading are legally protected or required, while others might violate privacy rights or professional ethics codes. Understanding the legal and ethical framework in your specific context prevents inadvertent violations and protects both you and others. Self-awareness and bias recognition are essential for ethical behavior reading. Everyone brings their own experiences, cultural background, and emotional state to behavioral interpretation. Recognizing your own biases and limitations prevents projecting your issues onto others or making unfair judgments based on incomplete information. Continuous learning and humility about the limits of behavior reading maintain ethical practice. No matter how skilled you become, you'll sometimes misinterpret signals, miss important information, or make incorrect assumptions. Maintaining humility about these limitations prevents overconfidence that can lead to poor decisions or harm to others. Building skills in ethical behavior reading enhances every aspect of your life while contributing positively to others' experiences. When used appropriately, these skills create more understanding, empathy, and connection in a world that often lacks all three. The goal isn't to become a human lie detector or master manipulator, but to become someone who understands people more deeply and uses that understanding to build a better world for everyone. Chapter 11: Practical Scenarios and Real-World Applications. Understanding the theory behind reading people is only the beginning. The real mastery comes from applying these skills in specific situations where accurate behavioral reading can transform outcomes. Let's examine detailed scenarios where these skills make the biggest difference and how to apply them effectively. Job interviews represent one of the most high-stakes situations where behavior reading skills provide enormous advantages. As an interviewer, you can assess whether candidates are being truthful about their experience, gauge their actual confidence levels versus artificial bravado, detect genuine enthusiasm versus desperate need, and identify potential cultural fit issues before making hiring decisions. When interviewing candidates, establish their baseline behavior early by asking comfortable questions about their background or interests. Notice their normal speaking pace, gesture frequency, eye contact patterns, and posture preferences. Then watch for deviations when you ask about specific experiences, challenges, or technical skills. Someone who becomes suddenly rigid when discussing their last job might have unresolved conflicts there. A candidate whose voice becomes higher and speech faster when explaining technical achievements might be exaggerating their expertise. Look for authenticity indicators during interviews. Genuine enthusiasm shows through consistent energy across verbal and nonverbal channels. Fake enthusiasm often appears forced, with mismatched facial expressions and vocal patterns. Real confidence displays through relaxed posture, natural gestures, and comfort with pauses. Artificial confidence frequently involves overcompensation with excessive volume, rigid posture, and rushed speech to fill silence. As a job candidate, reading your interviewers helps you adjust your communication for maximum effectiveness. Notice whether they prefer detailed explanations or high-level overviews based on their questions and attention patterns. Detect their engagement levels through body language and adjust your energy accordingly. Identify their communication style preferences and mirror them appropriately. Sales and negotiation scenarios benefit enormously from accurate behavior reading. Understanding when prospects are genuinely interested versus being polite helps you focus effort appropriately. Detecting real objections versus smokescreens allows you to address actual concerns rather than wasting time on false issues. Recognizing buying signals prevents you from overselling and talking yourself out of deals. In sales conversations, watch for genuine interest indicators like leaning forward during product demonstrations, asking specific questions about implementation or pricing, using ownership language like "when we implement this," instead of "if we bought this," and displaying relaxed, open body language during discussions. Contrast these with polite disinterest signals such as checking phones or watches, giving generic responses, maintaining formal distance, and using lots of qualifier language. Customer objections reveal themselves through specific patterns before they're verbally expressed. Pre-objection behaviors include increased fidgeting, facial expressions of concern or confusion, backward-leaning posture, and hesitation before responding to questions. Recognizing these early warning signs allows you to address concerns before they become formal objections. Dating and romantic relationships provide rich opportunities for behavior reading application, helping you understand attraction levels, compatibility indicators, and emotional availability. Early dating behaviors reveal genuine interest through body orientation toward you, mirroring of your posture and movements, genuine laughter at your humor, finding excuses for appropriate touch, and maintaining strong eye contact during conversation. Emotional availability shows through openness about past relationships, without excessive detail or bitterness, comfort with appropriate vulnerability, consistent communication patterns between dates, and natural progression of intimacy levels. Emotionally unavailable people often display guarded body language, reluctance to share personal information, inconsistent communication patterns, and discomfort with emotional topics. Compatibility indicators appear through natural conversation flow without forced topics, similar energy levels during interactions, comfortable silences without awkwardness, aligned values revealed through spontaneous comments, and natural humor. Compatibility Incompatibility signals include frequent misunderstandings despite clear communication, energy level mismatches that create tension, discomfort during natural pauses, and values conflicts that create defensive responses. Parenting situations require sensitive application of behavior reading to understand children's emotional states and needs without invading their privacy or autonomy. Children often express stress through behavioral changes rather than verbal communication. Increased fidgeting, changes in sleep or eating patterns, withdrawal from normal activities, and regression to earlier behaviors often signal underlying emotional challenges. Academic or social problems frequently show through behavioral patterns before children verbalize difficulties. Reluctance to discuss school, changes in friendship patterns, decreased enthusiasm for previously enjoyed activities, and increased clinginess or defiance can indicate bullying, academic struggles, or social conflicts. Teenage behavior reading requires understanding that many dramatic behavioral changes are developmentally normal rather than indicators of problems. However, sudden personality shifts, dramatic changes in friend groups, secretive communication patterns, and extreme mood swings beyond normal adolescent patterns might indicate more serious issues requiring attention. Workplace dynamics benefit significantly from behavior reading skills in team meetings, conflict resolution, and leadership situations. Meeting engagement levels reveal themselves through body positioning, attention focus, and participation patterns. Engaged team members orient toward speakers, take notes, ask relevant questions, and maintain alert postures. Disengaged participants often multitask, maintain distant positioning, give minimal responses, and display restless behaviors. Workplace conflicts often build through recognizable patterns before exploding into serious problems. Early warning signs include decreased collaboration, formal communication, replacing casual interaction, territorial body language around shared resources, and avoidance of eye contact or normal social interaction. Recognizing these patterns early allows intervention before conflicts escalate. Leadership effectiveness can be assessed through team behavioral responses. Effective leaders generate relaxed, open team body language, voluntary participation in discussions, and natural mirroring behaviors. Ineffective leaders often see defensive postures, minimal voluntary participation, and formal guarded communication patterns from team members. Medical and therapeutic contexts require careful application of behavior reading skills with appropriate professional boundaries. Pain levels often show through subtle behavioral indicators beyond patient reports. Increased muscle tension, changes in breathing patterns, protective posturing, and facial microexpressions of discomfort help healthcare providers assess treatment effectiveness and pain management needs. Mental health indicators frequently appear through behavioral patterns before reaching crisis levels. Social withdrawal, changes in grooming habits, altered sleep patterns reflected in appearance, and shifts in communication styles can signal developing depression, anxiety, or other mental health challenges requiring professional attention. Legal and law enforcement contexts use behavior reading for security assessment and investigation purposes. Deceptive behaviors often cluster around specific topics or questions, creating patterns that trained observers can recognize. However, these applications require extensive training and must respect legal rights and cultural differences. Security screening benefits from understanding stress versus deception indicators. Normal travel stress creates different behavioral patterns than attempts to conceal prohibited items or malicious intent. Legitimate stress typically decreases once people understand procedures, while deceptive stress often increases during interactions with authority figures. Educational settings use behavior reading to understand student engagement, comprehension levels, and social dynamics. Confused students often display specific facial expressions and body language before asking questions. Bored students show different patterns than overwhelmed students, requiring different instructional responses. Classroom management improves when teachers can read early indicators of frustration, confusion, or behavioral problems. Recognizing these signals before they escalate allows for preventive intervention rather than reactive discipline. Financial and investment contexts benefit from reading clients' actual risk tolerance and understanding levels versus their stated preferences. Clients who claim high risk tolerance but show stress indicators when discussing volatile investments might need more conservative approaches than they verbally request. Customer service interactions improve dramatically when representatives can read client frustration levels, communication preferences, and satisfaction indicators. Adjusting communication style based on behavioral cues often prevents escalation and improves resolution outcomes. Chapter 12. Building your observation, skills, and practice techniques. Developing expert-level behavior reading skills requires systematic practice and deliberate skill building. Like learning a musical instrument or sport, these abilities improve through focused training rather than casual observation. Here's how to build your skills methodically and efficiently. Start with single skill focus rather than trying to observe everything simultaneously. Spend several days focusing exclusively on facial expressions, noting micro-expressions and emotional shifts without worrying about body language or vocal patterns. Then dedicate time to observing only body language clusters, ignoring facial and vocal information. This focused approach builds solid foundational skills before combining multiple channels of information. Facial expression training begins with studying the 7 universal emotions in controlled settings. Use online micro-expression training tools. Watch movies with the sound off, and practice identifying emotions from photographs. Set daily goals like spotting 5 genuine versus fake smiles, or catching 3 anger micro-expressions during normal interactions. Keep a simple log of what you observe to track your improvement. Body language skill building involves people watching in public spaces where you can observe natural behavior without personal involvement. Airports, coffee shops, and parks provide excellent observation opportunities. Practice identifying confidence levels, relationship dynamics, and emotional states based purely on posture, gestures, and spatial positioning. Notice how people's body language changes when they're talking on phones, waiting in lines, or interacting with different types of people. Vocal pattern recognition develops through focused listening during conversations, phone calls, and media consumption. Practice identifying emotional states from voice alone by listening to radio interviews, podcasts, or phone conversations without visual cues. Notice how stress, excitement, boredom, and deception affect speech patterns, vocal tone, and speaking rhythm. Baseline establishment practice requires interacting with people over time and documenting their normal behavioral patterns. Start with family members, close friends, or colleagues you see regularly. Create mental or written notes about their typical posture, gesture frequency, speaking patterns, and emotional expression styles when they're relaxed and comfortable. Then practice spotting deviations from these baselines during different moods or situations. Video analysis provides excellent controlled practice opportunities. Record yourself during various emotional states and practice identifying your own behavioral patterns. Watch interview shows, documentaries, or reality programs with the specific goal of reading participants' emotional states and truthfulness levels. Compare your assessments with context clues or follow-up information to check your accuracy. Mirror exercises help you understand how different emotional states feel and appear from the inside. Practice expressing different emotions intentionally and notice how each one affects your facial muscles, posture, breathing, and vocal patterns. This internal awareness makes you much better at recognizing these same patterns in others. Cultural observation practice involves watching interactions between people from different cultural backgrounds, either in person or through international media. Notice how cultural differences affect eye contact patterns, personal space preferences, emotional expression styles, and social interaction norms. This practice prevents cultural misinterpretations and improves cross-cultural behavior reading accuracy. Context variation training requires observing the same people in different environments and situations. Notice how your typically confident friend behaves in their boss's office versus at home. Watch how people's behavior changes between formal and casual settings, high stress and relaxed situations, or familiar and unfamiliar environments. This practice helps you separate personality traits from situational responses. Accuracy feedback systems improve your skills faster than unguided practice. When possible, verify your behavioral observations through follow-up conversations or external information. Ask friends or family members about their emotional states after you've made private assessments. Compare your reading of public figures with biographical information or interview revelations about their personalities and experiences. Progressive difficulty training starts with obvious, dramatic behavioral expressions and gradually works towards subtle, complex patterns. Begin by identifying clear anger, joy, or sadness in others before attempting to spot mild irritation, contained excitement, or mixed emotions. Practice with people who express emotions clearly before working with those who are more controlled or culturally reserved. Daily observation challenges keep your skills sharp through regular practice. Set goals like identifying 3 instances of genuine versus fake laughter each day, spotting 2 examples of micro-expressions during conversations, or noticing 1 example of cultural differences affecting behavior. These small, consistent practices build skills more effectively than occasional intensive observation sessions. Documentation and review processes accelerate learning through reflection and pattern recognition. Keep a behavior reading journal, noting interesting observations, successful assessments, and mistakes you've made. Review your notes weekly to identify patterns in your own observation skills and areas needing improvement. Note situations where you're most and least accurate to understand your skill development needs. Calibration exercises help you understand the reliability of different behavioral indicators in various contexts. Practice assessing the same behavioral signals in different environments, stress levels, and social situations. Learn which indicators are most reliable across different contexts and which require careful interpretation based on circumstances. Speed training develops your ability to rapidly assess behavioral patterns in brief interactions, Practice making quick assessments during short elevator rides, brief customer service interactions, or passing conversations. Then develop skills for longer-term observation during extended meetings, social gatherings, or ongoing relationships. Integration practice combines multiple behavior reading channels simultaneously after you've developed competence in individual areas. Start with simple combinations like facial expressions plus vocal patterns, then gradually add body language, context factors, and cultural considerations. This integration is where expert-level behavior reading skills develop. Chapter 13. Common mistakes and how to avoid them. Even skilled behavior readers make predictable mistakes that reduce accuracy and can damage relationships. Understanding these common pitfalls and developing strategies to avoid them dramatically improves your effectiveness and prevents misunderstandings that hurt personal and professional relationships. The single gesture trap represents the most frequent mistake in behavior reading. Focusing on isolated signals rather than behavioral clusters leads to wildly inaccurate interpretations. Someone crossing their arms might be cold, not defensive. A person avoiding eye contact could be culturally appropriate, shy, distracted, or processing complex information, not necessarily being deceptive. Always look for multiple confirming signals before drawing conclusions about someone's internal state. Projection bias causes people to interpret others' behavior through the lens of their own emotional states and personality traits. When you're feeling insecure, you're more likely to interpret neutral behaviors as rejection or criticism. When you're excited about something, you might misread others' polite interest as genuine enthusiasm. Regularly checking your own emotional state before making behavioral assessments helps prevent projecting your feelings onto others. Cultural blindness leads to serious misinterpretations when applying your cultural behavioral norms to people from different backgrounds. Direct eye contact, personal space preferences, emotional expression styles, and social interaction patterns vary dramatically across cultures. What seems rude, suspicious, or inappropriate in your culture might be perfectly normal and respectful in another. Always consider cultural context before making behavioral assessments. Confirmation bias drives people to notice behavioral signals that support their existing opinions while ignoring contradictory evidence. If you already dislike someone, you'll tend to interpret ambiguous behaviors negatively while missing positive signals. If you want someone to like you, you might misread polite behaviors as signs of genuine interest. Actively look for evidence that contradicts your initial impressions to maintain objectivity. The baseline rush mistake occurs when people make behavioral assessments without properly establishing someone's normal patterns first. Everyone's default behavior is different, and deviations from personal baselines are more meaningful than absolute behavioral signals. Someone who seems nervous might actually be more relaxed than usual for them, while someone who appears calm might be unusually tense by their standards. Context ignorance involves interpreting behaviors without considering environmental and situational factors. The same behavioral signals mean different things in different contexts. Rapid speech might indicate excitement at a party, but anxiety during a performance review. Crossed arms might signal defensiveness in an argument, but simple comfort while listening to a lecture. Always consider the immediate environment and situation before interpreting behavior. Overconfidence in abilities leads to making strong conclusions based on limited information. Even expert behavior readers achieve accuracy rates around 80% under ideal conditions, and real-world situations often involve significant ambiguity. Maintaining appropriate humility about the limitations of behavior reading prevents overcommitting to interpretations that might be wrong. Timing errors involve missing the temporary nature of many behavioral signals. Emotional micro-expressions last only fractions of seconds. Stress responses come and go quickly, and situational behaviors change as contexts shift. Making permanent assessments based on brief behavioral snapshots leads to inaccurate long-term judgments about people's personalities or character. The manipulation temptation represents an ethical mistake where people use behavior reading insights to exploit others rather than improve communication. Using someone's insecurity to pressure them into decisions, taking advantage of their attraction to you for personal gain, or leveraging their stress to win arguments, damages relationships, and violates ethical behavior reading principles. Stereotyping acceleration occurs when behavior reading reinforces existing prejudices rather than providing genuine insights. Noticing that someone from a particular background displays certain behaviors and then attributing those behaviors to their demographic group rather than individual personality creates harmful stereotypes and reduces behavior reading accuracy. The mind-reading fantasy involves believing that behavior reading provides access to people's exact thoughts rather than general emotional states and intentions. Behavior reading tells you someone is stressed, not specifically what they're stressed about. It reveals attraction, not the depth or nature of romantic feelings. It indicates deception, not the specific content of lies. Maintaining realistic expectations about what behavior reading can and cannot tell you prevents overinterpretation. Analysis paralysis strikes when people become so focused on reading behaviors that they stop participating naturally in interactions. Overanalyzing every gesture, expression, and vocal pattern makes you seem distant, calculating, or manipulative. Balance behavior reading with natural, authentic engagement in relationships and conversations. The expert trap involves assuming that behavior reading skills eliminate the need for direct communication. Even accurate behavioral assessment doesn't replace honest conversation about feelings, intentions, and needs. Use behavior reading to supplement, not substitute for, open communication in relationships and professional settings. False positive confidence occurs when coincidental accuracy reinforces incorrect assessment methods. If you wrongly guess someone's mood based on poor observation skills, but happen to be right due to luck or obvious contextual clues, you might gain false confidence in unreliable assessment techniques. Focus on developing systematic, evidence-based observation skills rather than relying on intuitive hunches. Relationship damage potential exists when behavior reading creates distance or suspicion in personal relationships. Constantly analyzing your partner, friends, or family members can make them feel studied rather than loved. People need to feel accepted and trusted, not constantly evaluated. Use behavior reading to understand and support others, not to judge or control them. Timescale confusion involves applying short-term behavioral observations to long-term personality assessments. Someone having a bad day doesn't have a bad personality. Someone who's nervous in one situation isn't necessarily an anxious person. Distinguish between temporary emotional states and enduring personality characteristics to avoid unfair, long-term judgments. Professional boundary violations occur when people inappropriately apply behavior reading skills in contexts where they lack proper training or authority. Amateur behavior reading shouldn't be used for medical diagnosis, legal assessments, or therapeutic interventions. Understand the limits of your expertise and refer serious concerns to appropriate professionals. Training plateau problems develop when people stop actively improving their skills after reaching basic competence. Like any complex skill, behavior reading requires ongoing practice and learning to maintain and improve accuracy. Regular skill-building activities and feedback from others help prevent stagnation and continue developing expertise. Validation-seeking mistakes happen when people use behavior reading primarily to confirm their own social status or interpersonal success, rather than to understand others better. Focusing on whether people like you, respect you, or find you attractive turns behavior reading into an anxious self-monitoring activity rather than a tool for building better relationships. Chapter 14. Integration and Mastery. Putting it all together. True mastery in reading people comes from seamlessly integrating all the individual skills into a comprehensive understanding of human behavior. Instead of consciously checking facial expressions, then body language, then vocal patterns, expert behavior readers develop an intuitive sense that automatically processes multiple channels of information simultaneously. Systematic integration begins by combining the most reliable behavioral channels first. Start by linking facial expressions with vocal patterns, since both reflect emotional states and are relatively easy to observe simultaneously. Practice identifying when someone's facial expression matches their vocal tone versus when there's disconnect between what their face and voice are communicating. Emotional consistency checking becomes second nature as you develop integration skills. When someone says they're fine, but their facial expression shows stress, their body language appears defensive, and their voice sounds strained, these multiple channels provide much more reliable information than any single indicator alone. Learn to weight different channels based on how difficult they are to fake or control consciously. Environmental integration involves automatically adjusting your behavioral interpretations based on context without conscious effort. Expert behavior readers naturally account for temperature, noise levels, social dynamics, and cultural factors when processing behavioral information. This contextual adjustment happens intuitively rather than through deliberate consideration of each environmental factor. Pattern recognition mastery develops when you begin seeing behavioral themes and sequences rather than isolated signals. You'll start noticing that certain personality types display predictable behavioral combinations, that emotional states follow recognizable progressions, and that relationship dynamics create characteristic interaction patterns. This pattern recognition allows prediction of likely future behaviors and responses. Calibration expertise involves understanding how various factors affect the reliability of different behavioral indicators. You'll develop intuitive sense for when someone's baseline behavior might be affected by medication, stress, cultural differences, or personality traits. This calibration allows you to adjust the confidence level of your behavioral assessments appropriately. Speed and accuracy balance represents advanced skill development, where quick behavioral assessments maintain high reliability. Beginning behavior readers must choose between speed and accuracy, but experts develop rapid pattern recognition that maintains precision. This skill proves invaluable in brief interactions, high-stakes situations, and dynamic social environments. Multi-person dynamics mastery involves reading not just individual behaviors, but group interaction patterns, power dynamics, alliance formations, and social hierarchies. You'll begin seeing how different people's behaviors influence and respond to each other, creating complex social systems that are predictable and readable once you understand the patterns. Intervention timing becomes intuitive as you develop mastery in behavioral reading. You'll sense the optimal moments to offer support when someone is struggling, to ask important questions when someone is receptive, to back off when someone needs space, and to engage more deeply when someone is open to connection. This timing sense dramatically improves relationship quality and communication effectiveness. Influence integration involves using behavioral insights to improve your own communication impact while maintaining ethical boundaries. You'll naturally adjust your communication style to match others' preferences. Choose optimal timing for important conversations and present information in ways that resonate with different personality types and emotional states. Predictive modeling develops when behavioral reading allows you to anticipate how different people will likely respond to various situations, decisions, or communication approaches. This predictive ability helps in planning interactions, avoiding conflicts, choosing effective persuasion strategies, and building stronger relationships through better understanding of others' needs and preferences. Professional application mastery varies based on your specific field, but generally involves integrating behavior reading seamlessly into your existing expertise. Teachers use these skills to optimize learning environments and understand student needs. Healthcare providers enhance patient care through better communication and assessment. Business professionals improve negotiations, team dynamics, and customer relationships. Continuous refinement processes keep your skills sharp and growing throughout your career. Master behavior readers regularly seek feedback on their assessments. Study new research in psychology and nonverbal communication. Practice with challenging subjects and situations, and remain humble about the limitations of their abilities. Teaching and mentoring others represents an advanced application that deepens your own understanding while sharing valuable skills. Explaining behavior reading concepts to others forces you to articulate principles clearly, identify subtle patterns you might take for granted, and develop systematic approaches to skill development. Ethical mastery involves maintaining appropriate boundaries and using behavioral insights to benefit others rather than exploit them. Expert behavior readers develop strong ethical frameworks that guide their application of these skills in personal and professional relationships. Personal awareness integration means understanding your own behavioral patterns as clearly as you read others. This self-awareness prevents projection, helps you understand how others might be reading your behavior, and allows you to communicate more effectively by controlling your own nonverbal signals when appropriate. Cultural competency mastery involves understanding behavioral differences across diverse cultural, socioeconomic, generational, and regional backgrounds. This competency prevents misinterpretation and allows effective behavior reading in multicultural environments. Technology integration represents modern mastery, as behavior reading adapts to digital communication channels, remote work environments, and virtual relationship building. Understanding how traditional behavioral principles apply to digital interactions expands your effectiveness in contemporary communication contexts. Stress and pressure performance ensures your behavior reading skills remain accurate, even in high-stakes, emotional, or challenging situations. Masters maintain objectivity and assessment accuracy when they're personally invested in outcomes, under time, pressure, or dealing with difficult people or circumstances. Long-term relationship applications involve using behavior reading to support relationship growth, navigate conflicts constructively, and maintain deep connections over time. This application requires understanding how people change and grow while maintaining core behavioral patterns throughout their lives. Chapter 15. Mastering Human Psychology for Lifelong Success. The journey to mastering human behavior reading never truly ends because people, cultures, and social dynamics continue evolving throughout your lifetime. The skills you've learned in this comprehensive guide provide a foundation for understanding human psychology that will serve you in every area of your life. But true mastery comes from continuous application, refinement, and ethical development of these abilities. Your transformation from casual observer to skilled behavior reader represents a fundamental shift in how you experience human interactions. You now possess the ability to see beyond surface appearances, to understand the emotional realities, psychological needs, and authentic personalities of the people around you. This deeper understanding transforms not just how you read others, but how you present yourself, communicate your own needs, and build meaningful relationships. The practical applications of these skills extend into every aspect of your personal and professional life. In your career, you'll excel at networking, negotiations, team collaboration, leadership, and customer relations, because you understand what motivates people and how to communicate effectively with different personality types. Your enhanced emotional intelligence will accelerate your professional advancement and increase your value in any field. Personal relationships benefit enormously from your new abilities. You'll build deeper friendships because you can sense when people need support, celebration, or simply someone who understands them. Romantic relationships improve when you can read your partner's emotional needs accurately and communicate in ways that resonate with their personality and communication preferences. Family dynamics become more harmonious when you understand the underlying emotions and motivations behind difficult behaviors. Parenting skills reach new levels of effectiveness when you can read your children's emotional states, developmental needs, and individual personalities. You'll provide better support during challenging times, recognize potential problems early, and communicate in ways that each child can understand and accept. These skills help you raise emotionally intelligent children who feel truly seen and understood. Social confidence increases dramatically when you can read social dynamics accurately. You'll know when you're welcome in conversations, when someone is interested in deeper connection, when groups are open to new members, and when it's time to gracefully exit social situations. This social intelligence eliminates much of the anxiety and uncertainty that plague many people in social settings. Leadership abilities expand when you can understand and motivate diverse teams effectively. You'll recognize when team members are struggling, excited, creative, or burned out, allowing you to provide appropriate support and challenge. Your ability to read group dynamics helps you navigate organizational politics, build coalitions, and create positive team cultures. Conflict resolution skills improve when you can see beyond surface arguments to understand underlying emotional needs and concerns. You'll de-escalate tensions more effectively, find win-win solutions more frequently, and maintain relationships even through disagreements. This ability makes you valuable in family, professional, and community settings where conflicts inevitably arise. Customer and client relations reach new levels of effectiveness when you can understand their actual needs, concerns, and decision-making processes beyond what they verbally express. You'll provide better service, build stronger loyalty, and achieve better outcomes by tailoring your approach to each individual's psychological preferences and communication style. Teaching and mentoring abilities expand when you can read students' comprehension levels, emotional states, and learning preferences. You'll know when to push harder, when to provide support, when to change teaching methods, and when to address underlying emotional or motivational issues that affect learning. Healthcare interactions improve dramatically when you can communicate effectively with medical professionals and understand their assessments beyond just their words. You'll also be better at advocating for family members who might struggle to communicate their symptoms or concerns effectively. Financial and business decisions benefit from your ability to read the authenticity, competence, and trustworthiness of advisors, partners, and service providers. You'll make better choices about whom to trust with significant decisions and investments. Legal and governmental interactions become more effective when you can understand the motivations and constraints of officials, lawyers, and bureaucrats. This understanding helps you navigate complex systems more successfully and achieve better outcomes in challenging situations. Travel and cultural experiences deepen when you can read social cues across different cultural contexts. You'll build connections with people from diverse backgrounds, avoid cultural misunderstandings, and gain richer experiences in different social environments. Personal safety and security improve when you can accurately assess potential threats, read aggressive intentions, and identify trustworthy versus dangerous people in various situations. These skills are particularly valuable in unfamiliar environments or challenging circumstances. The continuous learning journey ahead involves staying current with new research in psychology, neuroscience, and human behavior. Social media, technology, and cultural changes constantly create new contexts for human interaction that require updated understanding and interpretation skills. Technological evolution presents ongoing challenges and opportunities for behavior reading. Virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and new communication platforms will create novel contexts for human interaction that require adapted application of these fundamental principles. Generational differences continue evolving as each new generation develops different communication styles, emotional expression patterns, and social interaction preferences. Staying effective across generational boundaries requires ongoing observation and adaptation of your behavior reading skills. Cultural globalization creates increasing opportunities for cross-cultural interaction that benefit from sophisticated behavior reading abilities. Understanding how behavioral principles apply across diverse cultural contexts becomes increasingly valuable in our interconnected world. Professional development opportunities abound for people with advanced behavior reading skills. Fields like psychology, counseling, human resources, sales, marketing, education, healthcare, and law enforcement all value these abilities. Some people pursue formal training in related fields, while others apply these skills to enhance their existing careers. Ethical responsibility grows with your expertise in reading people. You now possess significant insight into others' psychological states and vulnerabilities. Using this knowledge to benefit others, build better relationships, and create more understanding in the world represents the highest application of these skills. Personal authenticity becomes both easier and more important as you develop these abilities. Understanding how others read your behavior helps you communicate more genuinely and effectively. You'll also develop greater self-awareness about your own emotional patterns, communication habits, and relationship dynamics. Teaching others these skills multiplies your positive impact while deepening your own understanding. whether formally or informally. Sharing behavior, reading knowledge, helps create a more understanding and empathetic world while reinforcing your own expertise through teaching. The ultimate goal of mastering human psychology isn't to become a master manipulator or human lie detector, but to become someone who understands people deeply enough to build genuine connections, provide meaningful support, and contribute positively to every interaction. These skills, developed and applied ethically, create ripple effects of understanding and empathy that extend far beyond your personal relationships. Your journey in mastering human behavior reading has equipped you with tools for lifelong learning about the endlessly fascinating complexity of human nature. Every person you meet provides opportunities to deepen your understanding, refine your skills, and apply your knowledge in service of building a more connected and understanding world. The ability to truly see and understand others represents one of the most valuable gifts you can develop, both for yourself and for everyone whose life you touch.